Good evening, I'm Zarganat and welcome to the studio and something new. Boy, does woodworking takes more setting up. And this is going to be an interesting one. A very interesting one. You know what, I kind of wish I had a bandsaw. You know what, I've got an idea. That's an interesting idea. Where's my pencil? I might just make this two-sided. Wish I had a bandsaw, because I'd have cut that in half, but I don't have a bandsaw. And I very much doubt I'd be able to sew it that accurately any other way. But let's get started with a flat chisel. Being careful not to cut myself. These things are sharp with a capital S. Right. Let's bring that down a bit. Now this may get in my way, but we will see. This is going to be fun. So what I'm going to do here, I think, is... Where's my ruler? Do I have a ruler? I thought I had a ruler. Where's my ruler? Why wouldn't I have my ruler? Does it disappear? Oh well, I'll use the yeah. I'm giving myself challenges, aren't I? Never mind. Let's switch that for that gouge. So now we hopefully start shifting wood. Yeah, that bit's split. If that wasn't obvious. And I don't like that happening. And leaving my tea on this desk is probably not a good idea. So we'll put it down on that desk. This is going to be a challenge because of the grain direction. The grain is running straight up and down the wood, or at least at this point, which is going to make for some interesting, as in challenging, as in the Chinese curse type of carving. Now this bit is background, so I've got some different levels on here. I've got the top level, I've got the ring, which is the next level down, then we're into the picture, which is its own level, and that's going to be interesting to do because I've got to drop that a little bit. Then we've got this gem here, and then we're into this. All of which is fun with a capital Z. Luckily, I think the grain is coming up slightly, which is helpful in this particular case. Otherwise, I'd be in significant danger of this actually splitting. Ooh, for the minute then I thought that had crashed. I might need to do an end cut there and then stop, which I think is probably a good idea. So we'll just stop it early. I'm going to be careful that I don't get this splitting and going back. Well, actually it doesn't really matter at this level, but I don't want it to happen anyway because it's kind of a habit to get into to allow things to split. So hence the end stop there. I don't want it to carry on. As I say, it wouldn't be a problem at this level because that jewel is going to be somewhere down here, but it's too easy a habit to get into saying, oh, it's okay. If you're splitting wood, you're not carving properly. You don't have the control that you should have. So I don't want to get into sort of, oh, I'll just let it split because it's okay. It means you're not doing it right. And there'll be one time where, because you're so used to letting the wood split, you do, and it splits completely where you don't want it to, and you have made a mess of the piece. I don't particularly like carving with wood grain along the line. I would much prefer it sort of diagonal most of the time. So at the moment this is just rough carving. I just want to remove material. That's splitting. Yeah. And here's where everybody starts watching to see when I cut myself, and I'm not going to, by the way, because I know what I'm doing. And although everybody who teaches things to do with chisels and sharp knives will say don't cut towards yourself, that's because beginners. That's splitting, but I can pull that through. It's a rule which makes it simpler to teach beginners. Once you get more experienced, you understand what the rule is about, and then once you understand the rules which aren't rules, they're guidelines, you know when you can not use those guidelines. Now, just in case anybody is worried, when I'm doing that, I'm driving the chisel with this hand, and I can't move very much because my fingers don't move very much. This hand here isn't driving it, it's just keeping it at the correct angle and direction. And so therefore, because I can't move very much, I'm not going to stab myself with the chisel. So if you are here to see that, sorry. So all this marking on here, most of it will disappear before we get anywhere near the level at which that marking becomes useful. It's kind of funny in a way putting it on, but we'll do it. I was just thinking I really could do with a spoon gouge there, and the nearest I've got to a spoon gouge is this, which has a bend in it to lets me get in a bit deeper. Every time I carve I go, you know what, I shouldn't put things really close because they don't allow me any space, and every time I put things really close. Actually, that's an interesting idea. Keep having ideas with this as I go along. And one of them was to make it two-sided, as in two different things, one on each side. The other thing was to get a saw out and saw this block of wood in half, which I would have been better doing before I started, but what the heck, can always do that tomorrow. Won't be as easy to do, but and the second thing was to make this a 3D carve and make that Gibberer three-dimensional. So this is a frame and there's something behind it, and we actually sort of put the frame in with the Gibberer behind, which is an interesting idea. You know what, I think that's a bit blunt. What I'm going to do is hone it. So I often will describe it as sharpening. It's not actually sharp. Well, it does make it sharper. Honing does make it sharper, but I'm not actually going to sort of apply a grindstone or anything like that. What I'm going to effectively do is polish it. Polish the edge. Which is what I'm doing here. Hold the blade at the correct angle and drag it backwards. The stuff that I put on it is a polishing compound. Polishing compound is a mild abrasive, a very mild abrasive, but it is enough to restore a sharp edge on these chisels. So just a few passes at the correct angle, which is the angle of the bevel, then turn it over 1, 2, 3, which just takes off any sort of, because when you polish or you grind or you otherwise work on sharpening a chisel like this, it bends over, so you turn it over and drag it backwards, which sort of bends that straight up and gives you your sharp edge. This wood still doesn't like a vertical cut there. Chisel's sharper, I can feel it, but now these are hand or palm, more correctly palm chisels. Called palm chisels because they fit in the palm of your hand. Hand chisels often have a slightly longer handle, and then you get what is often considered to be the normal woodworking chisels, which have quite a long handle, about this long, which you often find people hitting with a mallet. And then you get the sort of chisels which are used in wood turning, which have an even longer handle, so that you've got really good leverage on them, which you need when you're wood turning to stop the chisel flying off at all sorts of angles. But basically they're all the same thing. They just often have longer handles, or they've got thicker blades to support the higher loads. That, you know, if you're hitting something with a mallet, you want something that's got a fairly high load, or can carry a fairly high load. This is like a springish sort of steel, and does bend slightly. It's intended to. It's flexible, slightly flexible. Incidentally, if you ever see, you can tell the difference between a woodworking mallet and a carving mallet, by the way. If you didn't know, there is a difference. A carving mallet is round. Doesn't have a flat side as such. The head is circular, and that is on purpose, because you effectively always hit straight onto the piece of wood if you use a round-headed mallet, and you hit the head, then it always hits with the force, so that force goes straight down the chisel. If you use a flat-headed hammer or a flat-headed mallet and you hit off centre, you drive your chisel like that. A mallet, round-headed mallet, because it only has one point of contact, hits and pushes forward. So there's the difference between a carving mallet and a woodworking mallet. I have not left myself a lot of space here. So this is a real challenge for me anyway. So I'm kind of working my way into it. I don't actually know what I'm doing or exactly how I should carve this. I'm just going with what seems right, using my experience, if you like, of carving, which isn't extensive, but I do have some. I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years at least, with a year off in the middle. So this particular stream is going to be a lot about just removing material. There's a lot of material to remove. And it's going to be relief carved. Well, it is, unless I decide to go to a full carve. But it's at the moment it's going to be a relief carve, which means it's going to have a backboard on it. So when I carve this down, it's going to look like a board in which this is on top of. And it's called relief carving, I suppose, because I've relieved the image out of this block of wood. Now if I am going to cut this in half tomorrow with a big saw, I may even use a hacksaw, that way I'll get a finer cut. Although it will take an awfully lot longer. Then I don't want to go all the way too close down. I'm going to give myself something with which to support the wood. Actually, what I should use is... Ooh, would it? Well, yes. Yeah. What I should do is get my... rotary saw, or whatever they're called these days. I can circular saw out. At least I can run down the edge and cut quite a large way through it. That might be a better idea, providing I find my circular saw. Now, this level is going to go down quite a bit. This is going to be fairly close to this final level when it gets down there. But if I cut this out now, then I'm going to lose track of just where everything is. So I'm going to cut the background, most of the background level down. Then what I'll do is I'll take the next level, this bit down, and gradually lower the whole piece. Probably, well, this banner is the highest point and it's not flat, so this will be carved down a little tiny bit here, but essentially everything else then is off of flat. That's the highest point. The lowest point is probably going to be in there. That is assuming we don't talk about the background itself, which is truly the lowest point, or often is in a relief carve, although there is nothing to say it has to be. I can carve past the back plane with that, but the back plane is often only sort of quite thin. This might be a bit thicker just with the amount of wood that I need to remove. And I am taking this quite slow because I am not sure what I'm doing. So I'm not hacking at it with great big sort of gouges. So if there's anybody watching that wants to know anything about carving, feel free to ask. Or if you want to know about pyrography or glass engraving or anything else that we do on this channel, then you are quite welcome to say so. That camera, I'm tending to work over here, aren't I? I'm kind of in. I don't want to move that. Have I got something that I can put there to stand the camera on? I suppose I could with that. Although, yeah, it might be stable enough. I'm still behind this camera, but there's about half a second frame buffer on that. Interesting. Right, I really should do a stop cut, which is that. And the stop cut is so called because it stops the cut. Oh, it's a cut that stops the cut. So what you should do is cut down like that before you come across like this, and then the chip immediately breaks off, and you hear the clunk. That's the clunk as you break through the stop cut, and it basically helps you know when you've cut that far. But essentially what the stop cut is there to do is to stop you driving the chisel and breaking this piece off here. And this is a little bit awkward working around a camera. This is where proper woodworking vise comes in useful, because what you do with a woodworking vise is you screw the wood to it and then you can actually manipulate it. All I do is lower this desk down and then I can spin the piece, but I don't have one of those woodworking vices, so I am stuck here with clamping it to the desk and having to work around it. By the way, if you're ever feeling cold, woodworking like this is a good way to warm up. There's a lot of effort required for fine motor control or muscle control to do these sorts of things, which gets you quite warm. Now I'm going to try and keep it so you can see what I'm doing, but I won't guarantee that will be possible all the time. I will always be carving this piece for the safety of me first, and then the piece second. And that may mean that it gets in your way when you're trying to view, and if that's the case, I'm sorry, but that's the way it has to be. Incidentally, I'm using a flat chisel here. Flat chisel, it's called a flat chisel for obvious reasons. It's flat. And I do, or have often in the past, had people telling me I'm using it wrong. Because I've got the bevel downwards. Yeah, away from, then I should be using, especially when I'm coming down an edge like this, straight down. They're telling me I shouldn't be using the bevel side against here, I should be using the flat side. And I'm doing it wrong. So these internet experts, I'm not doing it wrong, by the way, I'm doing it right. The bevel is always against the wood that you want to keep. Now I don't actually want to keep some of this wood, but for the minute it's the bit of wood I want to keep. So using it bevel down, and I'm using here the bevel against this piece of wood that I want to keep. So I am using it correctly. The reason why you use the bevel like that is because if you drive this straight into a piece of wood like this, that angle there makes the chisel want to do that. So if I was putting this against some wood that I want it to keep, it would be driving the chisel into the wood I want to keep, removing it, which is kind of against the purpose. If I put it that way, the bevel goes straight down, and the wood on this side, which I don't want to keep, gets sliced away. Similarly when I'm driving along like this. The other reason why you use a bevel like that is because then you can come up. By levering the back down, you pivot on the back of this bevel, letting the blade tip come up. If it was the other way up, you can't do that. There's no leverage, and you just end up going deeper into the wood. And if you are still not sure, let me show you gouges. Gouges only work one way, effectively, and they gouge, and the bevel is on the bottom. And if I show you a V tool, which cuts a V shape, the bevel is on the bottom, or the edges, it's not on the inside. So you use a V tool like that, use a flat chisel like that. Wolfie, your PC did die. My network died today. I got up this morning and my DHCP server died, along with the master controller. So I effectively had no network, because without DHCP I've got no IP addresses and I couldn't get out. But that's some other work to do, so I didn't get a chance to fix it till about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. So it was touch and go whether I'd actually be streaming tonight. And I still don't know why it didn't work. I can't find out. The machine just died. It got rebooted twice. Didn't work. Third reboot, it came straight back up. Your hard drive is crashing your PC and all your music. Ah dear. There's this magical thing called backups, which you are now learning that you wished you had done. Get it copied off. Get the stuff that's on your hard drive copied off as soon as you can onto something else. And if you're finding that you can't because it's crashing, external hard drive you have plugged in, it keeps crashing your PC. Oh, okay. Keeps crashing your PC. Why would I? That's interesting. Why it would crash? Because it should just be data. What can you do about that? If you had another machine, you could try it on that. If you had a Linux machine that has a different operating system and may well obviously be a bit safer, your final option is to take the hard drive out in case it's the electronics of the USB interface which is crashing your PC, not the actual drive itself, and then sort of plug the drive in by some other means while your music is on there. If it doesn't crash it immediately that it's plugged in, then drag as much off as you can and before it crashes. And it's not great to keep crashing a PC though. Yeah, it crashes randomly. Okay. Get as much off as you can onto something else in between crashes if you want to keep it. That's about all you can do at that point. If you haven't got something else to put it on, take that drive off. Don't connect it until you have got something else to put it on, because the more you use it, the more chance you have of completely corrupting the drive. So get another drive if you need one, and then try and pull the music off in between crashes. The other thing, what else could you do? Not a lot. There are some settings in Windows as to how much of the drive it caches. That's write caching, so that won't help. You could try the check disk on it, which is the fix. Yeah, although most what the factory will do, if it's still under any form of warranty, is just give you another drive. It won't give you the data back that's on it. Check disk /F to fix. Might work, might just lose more of the data. See, that's I learned a long time ago. What I've got is I've got a server which has got my music on it, and it's also got all the photographs on it, but I have an external hard drive which is not plugged in to anything, and anytime I put something onto the server, like more music or new set of pictures, what I'll do is I'll plug the drive in to the PC, copy the stuff to the server and to the hard drive before I erase the source. So it's in two places before I erase the source. That way I've got 3 copies, and then I unplug the drive and then delete the originals. But yeah, you've got a problem. You've got a problem. It's a risk. Doing a check disk, which is the fix in Windows or on any machine, Linux or even Apple, is a risk, because that could well just go, this is so badly corrupted, what I'm going to do effectively is format the drive. And format the drive, your data's gone. When you're carving, oops, there's it. Never pull these chips off, by the way, that are there. Always cut them off. Because if you pull them off, especially if you're near the surface, you could pull a long piece all the way across the piece of work that you want. So always make sure you cut them off. Basically, if they don't fall off their own accord, you've not cut them off yet. So you're going to make sure that things are cut. See, that is a split, that's not good. This clamp really isn't good enough, but it's all I've got and it is safe as long as I remember that actually what I ought to do is get my blue non-stick mat out. I will remember that for the next stream. Oops, Daisy, I'm working around this camera, it's not very easy. And it's now, yeah, I need to turn the autofocus off, don't I? Let's put that up there, so it's a little bit less in my way, but you've got a bigger field of view. And let me turn the autofocus off. I thought it was off, but it obviously isn't. It's not. Autofocus off. There. Oh. Carving is a way of changing a nice block of wood into a load of shavings. Chisels I'm using, if anybody has any interest at all in them, are flex cut chisels. They have a a good reputation, and I've always been pleased with them. I mean, bearing in mind that these are the only, I was about to say the only chisels I've ever had for carving. That isn't strictly true, but they're the only chisels I've actually carved with. And it's kind of a source of disappointment for me in a way, because when I first started carving, before I bought these, I had an interest in carving, and Lady Zara bought me a set of chisels, and she got them from the local hobby shop. Palm chisels, fixed handles with the blades. These are removable. Kind of look quite nice, but they were blunt, so I wouldn't. They wouldn't cut balsa wood. Balsa wood is a hard wood that's very soft, just to confuse matters. And they wouldn't cut that. Actually, cutting softer wood, you need sharper tools than you do to cut harder woods, but they wouldn't cut anything. And at the time I had nothing really to sharpen them with, and I could not get them sharp. I couldn't get them sharp enough to cut anything with, which was a great pity. I've still got them because I'm not going to throw them away. I do have some proper whetstones somewhere, and I'm gonna, one of these days I'm going to sharpen those tools up, and I'm actually going to get them sharp enough to use, so at least I'll have carved something with them. Yes, it was. It's a pity that. I mean, as I was lucky in a way in that I knew that the fact that I couldn't carve with them was because of the tools, because they were blunt. A lot of beginners wouldn't know that, and they kind of would think that they weren't able to carve, and. Potential is then with tools like that is that people give up, thinking it's them, they're not very good, when in fact it's the tools. Now I know there is this saying which a bad workman blames their tools, but a beginner workman doesn't know when to blame their tools, and there is a time, with if you've got blunt tools, there's nothing you can do. Even a good craftsman can't work with blunt tools. And it's kind of a pity that a hobby shop, which is where people sort of would first see these sorts of things and perhaps go, "Oh, I'd like to try that," are getting tools that will never work. So I do have another set, and actually just recently I got a set of hand chisels. They're similar to palm chisels, they've just got a longer handle. But I haven't tried those out yet either. I've also got a set of miniature chisels, which is also something I haven't tried. But they're more like that sort of. I was about to say that sort of size. They're about the same size, but they've got like dowel handles and they've got very small blades, which I have yet to try. Lady Zara got me those at the same time as well. I've got a feeling they're slightly blunt, but they've got more of a knife blade type blade than a metal blade. So they're more like knives than they are like chisels. don't normally carve onto wood because it's quite hard to place the chisel. But because I'm using a gouge here and I'm not that bothered about the depth of the cut, other than it being safe and a reasonable cut, then I'm not going down, the line I'm going down to is quite a long way down. So it doesn't matter if I overcut the length or the depth. As you get closer to where you want to get to, then you don't want to be carving on from the edge, because you can't accurately carve that way. You normally carve off the edge. Yeah, I could get the big gouge out at this point, but it's not really worth it. Because I don't actually have that big an area to get rid of. Sorry about the shaking camera, but the whole desk is moving. And the camera is fastened to the desk. To alleviate that, I'd need to mount the camera off the desk, and the only way I can do that is with something like a microphone boom. And I'm saving up. The microphone boom will let me place the camera further over in the desk, or even looking over my shoulder. Oh blimey, is that the time already? I should be a bit more careful. Now if you can hear that crack at the end there, that's wood splitting off, which you do not want to hear. So it basically means that I'm splitting the wood. A split is uncontrolled, which means you're not going to necessarily get what you want in terms of where it goes. So if you're hearing that crack, sound has got a lot to do with it when you're carving. You can tell a lot from the sound. I mean, for example, I can tell I'm cutting cross grain here because of the sound, but I can also tell I'm actually cutting the wood rather than splitting it, for example. If it goes quiet, then I'm probably splitting. If I hear the crack and I'm splitting quite strongly, and I'm going to cut myself if I'm not careful on the edge of this wood, because that edge is sharp. Whew. Hard work. You might not think so, and it might not look it with the small chips, but it is actually hard work. You've got a really controlled movement, which means that you're not only, when you're pushing a chisel, you're not only pushing it, but you're pulling at it as well. So you're opposing yourself and you're holding it down. It's quite a complex sort of movement. And if you're in it, what's the temperature in here? Mind you, it is 24 degrees in here, but it's still, even when it's not, it gets quite warm because of all the muscle control. That you need. What I should do is turn that around and cut that way, which will get my fingers from not getting sliced on the edge of the wood. Now this is a gouge. It's called a gouge because you gouge wood out with it. But gouge, it's a U-gouge. Most gouges are. It's a U-shape, so the edge you see there is U-shaped. But it's also got a slight spoon. Spoon gouges have a bend in them basically. Sometimes they are more pronounced like that, or sometimes they're even more curved. And that is to let you, with a spoon gouge, use a spoon gouge for carving spoons. And I want to try that one of these days. And the bend lets you go into the bowl and come back out again. With a flat gouge, like this one, which is almost flat, you haven't got much leeway. You have some because of the bevel, but you haven't got much leeway to get into a bowl, or any sort of deep sort of bowl. You put that chisel away. Chisels that I'm not actively using, I keep in the pouch, and it keeps them sharp because they're not, you know, knocking against each other, banging around on the desk and things like that. I'm using a V tool here just to give me a straight edge. Kind of cheating in a way, rather than cutting straight down. I'm kind of using the V tool to create a vertical and a flat edge. And this is where I ought to be carving off, but as this is waste wood I'm carving into, I'm not overly concerned at the moment. In this particular case, I'm using my hand and arm to drive the gouge, or to drive the chisel, using my left hand to control where it goes. Now with a chisel, when you're chiseling, if you find yourself doing that after every cut, shooting off, then you've not got control of your chisel. So stop it. And get better control. Sometimes what that indicates is your tool is blunt, because you're using too much force to control the chisel. So if you find yourself doing it a lot, then sharpen the tool. No, don't do that with a flat chisel. You do that with a gouge, but not a flat chisel. So I mentioned carving off the piece of wood rather than on it. So I'm kind of cheating here, but I'm carving off the wood, I'm carving off the side to create this sort of slope, which then lets me come in there. Let's pull out the bigger gouge, which is that one, or rather the deeper gouge, not the bigger gouge. Now, these are slightly spoon shaped and the bevel lets me create this go down and come up and out without actually tearing the wood. If I tried this with a flat chisel, I would tear the wood. It might come out, it might not, but it would definitely tear the wood, it would rip it. This is actually cutting. And that's about as deep as it will go. I'm doing there, just rocking the chisel backwards and forwards, so I'm effectively slicing, a bit like using a knife. Sometimes if a chisel stops and doesn't want to continue, then that will sort of just help ease it along a little bit. Ow, I'm scratching myself on the edge of there. The other thing a spoon gouge lets you do is go more down and around. So like here I can get into this area with a spoon gouge by going down and around, which I couldn't as easily do with a flat gouge. One of my other gouges is actually more bent than this, but this one's got it's quite a deep gouge, which lets me remove a lot more material, which means it's faster. Now then, just at this point here, I'm not doing too bad. I was going to say the grain changes. You can look on the side here. I can see the direction of the grain. The tree was like this, and this is actually not quite the centre. Centre's probably back here somewhere, back this way somewhere. This, by the way, is called basswood, or rather in America it's called basswood. It is called that in Europe, but it's also called European lime. So you sometimes see it described as either. It's a really good wood for beginners to carve. It's a good wood for experienced people to carve. It's got a nice close grain. It takes a carve, creates quite a nice clean sharp edge. So you can get a nice defined edge. It's not soft as some woods are. Yet it cuts relatively easily. As you can see, I'm going through this quite easily. Don't need to put a lot of effort into it. I don't need to use a mallet like I might do with sort of mahogany or walnut, for example. What did we use? First time I did any streaming of carving on. First time I did streaming of carving. First time I carved on stream is what I was trying to say. I'm trying to forget what the wood I used then. It was an old board that I had, or a board that I happened to have, and I was trying to carve it. And partly it wasn't clamped down. Actually, it wasn't clamped down. I got some clamps after that. But it was. I'm trying to think what wood it was. It was a fairly common wood, but that was really hard to carve. I was trying to carve a rose, and normally carve that about, well, I don't know, half an inch deep. This stuff was so ash. It was ash. It was so deep that it's so hard that I ended up doing a really shallow relief carve, which was kind of different, but it took a lot of effort to carve that. That was ash. If you want to see that carving, by the way, I think it's on YouTube. I think that one was recorded. I got most of the early videos are archived up onto YouTube. So if you want to take a look at any of the early channel videos, like the carving, then those are available, and there's probably a playlist there for it as well. Although I couldn't actually tell you because I've got some 400 and odd videos up there and I can't remember every one. What I haven't decided is whether to make this a pure hand carve or whether perhaps to get the rotary carver out and do some of it using the rotary carving tools. That creates a lot of sawdust, so which is a bit harder to clean up than this stuff, but it is a possibility, and I might use that for doing things like in the teeth here. In fact, I might even get the pneumatic carving out for carver out for that. One of the things I'd love to save up to get is I've got a Fordham motor, which is it's a motor which you hang on the stand, and it's got a long flexible shaft, and you put a rotary tool in the handpiece at the end. But what they do is a handpiece, which is what they call a reciprocal handpiece. Instead of rotating, it hammers. So you put a chisel end in it, you get a hammer action. So you know, you can carve you can carve if you like without actually having to put any effort into it, because the handpiece does it. So you're just guiding it, and something like this you'd be able to sort of, you know, just guide it along, just like stroking the piece of wood if you like, but with the chisel itself doing all the work. And that's a handpiece that I got my eye on, and have had my eye on for quite some time. Not yet bought one because they're not actually cheap. UK wise, what, about 150 UK pounds, I think, off the top of my head. But that would that's an interesting tool I'd like to try. You still have to be able to carve properly, by the way. It doesn't magically make you a better carver. It doesn't magically enable you to carve wood that you couldn't, doesn't magically let you carve wood in the wrong way. I mean, it might let you carve wood that you couldn't before. I mean, like me with the ash, where I couldn't drive the chisel through it. It would, you know, it would do the driving. So in that particular case, I might, you know, be able to carve wood that I couldn't have carved before. But you know, if I'm gonna,
sorry, I didn't get that.
Good, because I wasn't talking to you. Yeah, if I'm carving a piece of wood in the wrong direction, having the chisel, you know, a reciprocal handpiece which is driving the chisel, all that does is make things go wrong quicker. So you still have to carve properly. It just saves you the muscle effort. I can see when you're moving out, certainly when you're removing a lot of material like I'm doing here, that would be quite an interesting tool to use. I really ought to spin this round and carve the other way, but given that I'm going to stop in a few minutes, I don't want to do that. So again, a lot of people will be told, don't do that, don't carve towards yourself, don't drive a chisel towards yourself. And it's put over to a lot of people, especially beginners, as a rule. It's not really a rule, because you can drive a chisel towards yourself. You can see me doing it here. A lot of beginners think it's unsafe. It is if you're not doing it right. And that's why people who teach beginners teach them it, because beginners don't really know how to do it safely, or more safely. So to let you in on the secret, it's not really a secret, but beginners who are, let's say, using a hand chisel like this, carving towards themselves, will often hold the chisel like that and drive like this with their arms. And guess what? Guess where your arms end up? Your arms can end up behind you. So if you're pulling really hard on a chisel, let's say it's jammed, it suddenly breaks away. That goes right in your stomach. It's not a good idea. If you watch me carving this, I'm not driving, I've got my arms on the bench. Okay? So I'm not pulling with my arms because I can't, they're on the bench. I am holding the chisel with my thumb and finger. I'm actually driving the chisel with my left hand, not my right. So I'm actually pulling this on the blade. My right hand is doing is stabilising and ensure this blade goes where I want it to go. And I'm also not using much effort. You might have seen me just there reposition the blade, and that is because I was taking too deep a cut. That's too much, I can't pull it. I'm not going to try, I'm going to take a more shallow cut. Now, if this jams and suddenly breaks away like that, as you can see, my hand, this is controlling it, and the two together make sure the chisel goes in that direction and stops there. It stops there because I physically can't bend my fingers any more than that. So as long as I keep this part of my thumb and palm out of the way, like this, it's a relatively safe manoeuvre if you know what you're doing, because I'm not able to actually drive that chisel any further. I'm also not putting a lot of effort into it, because that's when it becomes unstable. Incidentally, it's the same thing when you're driving like this. If somebody was doing that, you don't hold the block of wood and do this, because you don't have the control with one hand for a start. But if you cut and then you drive, not very nice. They always say keep your hand behind the blade for that very reason. If you lose control and it shoots out, then you're not going to get caught by the blade, because these are sharp. They're razor sharp. And same when I'm doing this, you notice I'm keeping my hands away from the blade, but I am just driving it with my fingertips. Yes, I'm not shifting as much wood. If I wanted to shift a lot of wood, what I'd be doing is turning this piece of wood around and driving the chisel forwards rather than backwards. Okay, lol, good afternoon. Interesting choice of music. Pretzel Rocks. It's doing the choosing for me. It's called Epic. Is the channel, if you like, or the collection. And I quite like it. I mean, it's kind of a sort of, it's not the chill out channel, but it's quite. Sometimes the chill out gets a little bit too. I might switch to that tomorrow night. But anyway, good evening, welcome back. Wolfie is starting to look something. Thank you for driving the chisels. Yeah, well, that's why people come and watch, isn't it? Because they are kind of secretly hoping to see that. A long time ago I started as an apprentice in a particular firm, and one of the things they did is show us some safety training videos and about correct handling of tools like screwdrivers, and what they did was they showed you what can happen if you don't use them correctly, and it was on a film, and the film had used makeup, prosthetic makeup, but they did actually sort of show you film, if you like, of things like screwdrivers in hands. Now it's prosthetic makeup, so it really wasn't in a hand, but prosthetic makeup is really realistic, and you could see the screwdriver wobbling and the skin moving, and it really made you not want to get anything like that, and you work safely with tools. So you cut yourself all day. You wouldn't because you wouldn't enjoy cutting yourself all day. but providing you use the tools properly, it's actually quite hard to cut yourself. I mean, I'm driving this chisel away from it. It's got to go a long way around in a really circuitous route to cut me. And even doing it this way, providing you do it right, I can't cut myself. You know, I really can't. In fact, I never have cut myself carving. What I have cut myself is putting the chisels away. I've done it twice. Bring the chisels away in the bag that's here. In this case here. Because what I do is, and I'm going to do it now, is the chisels slot in like that. And and you can see the slot into the in here. And twice now I've caught the edge of things like this particular chisel, or this one. As you're doing that, sometimes you can just catch the edge of these. They are razor sharp, and I have nicked myself, and I've had blood leak out of me. But I've never done it whilst actually carving. I've only ever done it putting the tools away in the bag. So I'm even more careful about putting them away. You pass out for something if you saw something. Yeah, some people do. Blood and things like that. Nobody did on that particular course. But yeah. Some people don't bother. Don't pass out on blood unless it's their own. For some reason their own blood makes them pass out, but other people's, nah. Which is quite funny in a way. Or vice versa. Other people's blood, but not their own. So, I'm just putting stuff. I always put stuff away. It's I always clean up afterwards. Because we're at 9 o'clock now, and I'm going to stop for this evening. So just make sure all the sharp stuff is away in safe containers. Now this by the way is a leather bag. For those people who are watching, it's made out of leather. It's better for the chisels than just about anything else. You can put them away in like plastic individual containers like this. But one of the things you don't do is throw them in a box. Throw them in a box, they go blunt because they bang against each other and things like that. And metal against metal will blunt the chisels. Even to some extent, you have to put them in a plastic box because the plastic will tend to dull the edges of the chisels. With the leather, as I close that, it may cut into the leather slightly, but precisely that, it's cut into the leather, so the leather hasn't blunted the edge. And in fact, when you strop, as it's called, you use leather to do it. Yeah, you see things like sometimes that they need a little bit of moving, just so that they don't come into contact with the other. But it is always better to keep them in a leather wallet like that, chisels, or at least to cap the ends of the chisels. So carpenter's chisels often come with a cap, which you slide on the end, which is a good thing to do. Keeps them sharp. Right. Well, the other person. I've now got to put all this waste wood. And it doesn't look like I've done a lot, but it takes a bit of doing. Actually, it's harder to do small areas than it is to do great big areas. Great big areas, you just go at it. Big gouge. Little areas, especially around the edges here, are quite difficult to do. So, but it's something that has to be done. So when I'm working on this, I'm just going to take it off. What we're going to do with this, just to explain further, is I have drawn on here the pattern, which is in red, but essentially that's kind of pointless in a way, because that pattern will get carved off. What it's really there for is to do one of two things. One is for the outline, so I can carve down to the background level and get the waste wood around the outside away. And the second is for planning. So I'm looking at this, for example, and I go, this banner here is the highest point. It's above everything else. It's above the frame, so it's the highest level. So what I will probably do is have this just under the surface of this wood. Always carve the surface off, but it might be just a tiny fraction under the surface of the wood. You get a nice clean wood cut then, rather than whatever's here. And then you work downwards from that. This frame, for example, is perhaps the maybe the jewel here is the next level down. And I'm not sure what we're going to do about the number 1 in it, whether we inset that or leave it stud proud, I'm not sure. Then perhaps we've got this frame, and then the piece splits into two. It becomes two pieces in one, because once you hit that frame, you've then got the outside thing here, which probably goes almost down to the background. Yeah, it's sort of a fancy sort of frame. But then you've got inside the frame. Now the inside the frame has its own set of levels. The gibberer being the highest point of the gibberer, which is here, being the top of it, and I'm not sure where we'll place that inside the frame. But then you've got the deepest part is this background here, and everything else is in between. So you the frame segments the picture. And this is kind of like a window. So it gets interesting as to quite what you do. Do you decide to take everything, it's a window, so they're further back and go down, or it's a portal and this thing is coming through the portal, in which case it will perhaps be slightly higher than the frame. I don't know at this point in time, but either way, that frame is probably going to be about ½ an inch deeper. Which means I'm going to carve all of that wood away, which means all this drawing that's done on it, pointless, because it's going to get carved away. It looks pretty, but really all I need to have done is put the frame in, because all of that is going to be below it, and I'll have to draw all that in again afterwards. A little blood out of your status. Oh dear. Oh dear. I used to give blood. I gave 97 pints of blood. And then I had to give up because on taking the 97th, on that visit for the 97th, actually it would have been 95, 96, 97. Because what I was doing at that point was giving blood, which was equivalent to 3 pints of blood at a time. I'll mention what that is afterwards. But I'd had a real tiring day before. I'd been up very early that morning. I'd just flown back into the local airport, and basically I started to feel faint while they were taking the blood. And at that point, stop. Immediate stop. Everything, needles come out and that sort of thing. In this particular case, they pump the blood back, but the needles come out, and then usually what they'll do at that point is say, "Thank you very much, but it's probably a good idea you don't give any more blood." So I stopped at 97 pints. But I used to give blood about once every 3-4 weeks, 3 pints at a time. But just to explain, for anybody not familiar with giving blood, certainly in the UK there's 3 ways to give blood. You can give what they call whole blood, which is they only take a pint of blood, and they actually take a pint of blood. There's then plasma, and what they do then is they take the blood out, centrifuge it, and give you the blood cells back. But they keep the liquid. It's a straw-coloured liquid that your blood is that is actually your blood, if you like, the carrier for the blood cells, and that's what they call plasma. And to get a pint of plasma, they effectively have to take 2 pints out and give you a pint back. And the third type is white blood cells. and they take not only plasma, but they do it's an additional bit of centrifuging, I guess. But they take the white blood cells separately out of your blood, and to get a donation, they have to effectively draw 3 pints out and give you most of it back. So they've taken 3 pints, so even though they've given you it back, it's 3 pints at a time. But giving plasma or giving white blood cells, you can do more in the UK anyway. You can give more frequently than you can whole blood. Whole blood is about once every 4 or 5 months, I think, possibly 6 months. And at the time, plasma used to be about once a month, and white blood cells was about every 2 weeks. And I used to do that. When I started, I was laid on a hospital bed with a needle in each arm. So there you go. Nowadays, I think it's just a single needle, and it's in the corner of your arm, so you can't bend your arms because you've got a needle in the corner of each arm, or you couldn't back then. Now you just one. But you're selfish. You don't give blood. Well. If everybody, well, I must admit, I never thought about it. I gave blood because my mother gave blood, and I went along, and then just started when I was able to start. It was just seemed a natural thing to do. But if you kind of think about it, that if nobody gave blood, then lots of operations and emergency things would not be possible. So I know in the States, I think they pay you, don't they? But Europe and certainly in England, they don't. I think it's illegal, actually. But I can't do it anymore. And now I'm probably too old. I couldn't say in your country. In the UK, they do. You can go to a blood transfusion collection centre. And there is often one in each region, town possibly. I wouldn't like to know, to be honest. There are specialist centres which they're usually in the centres of towns because that's where people are. And you can go there and you just turn up basically. But in the UK, what they also do is there is mobile units that go around and into localities like local town halls and things. And they'll set up for a day, and just people who want to donate blood can go there, and they give whole blood in those centres. To give them more complex, like the plasma and the white blood cells, you have to go to the specialist centres, and because they've got the extra, more expensive and delicate and sort of equipment that's needed to the centrifuges basically to withdraw the components that they need. In the UK, I suggest anybody who wants to look up the blood transfusion service and on the internet, and there'll be information there about how to give blood. Interestingly, the bit I always hated about giving blood was not giving the blood and not having great big large bore needles, and there are large bore needles, by the way. They're kind of like that sort of size in, I don't know if you can see this, but in diameter. Actually, it's probably bigger than that. They're sort of it's halfway between this sort of size and that sort of size. They're quite large. That didn't bother me. In fact, it doesn't hurt a lot. Tickles quite a bit when they pull them out. The bit that I always used to hate is they do an anemia check, or they used to do. Unless don't know how they do it. Maybe they use a machine these days. But what they do is they use a lance and they jab your thumb. They use a machine to do it these days, which it sort of rams a needle into your thumb to get a spot of blood, which they then test. They used to drop that blood into a liquid for anemia checks, but I don't know if they do other things with it these days. They probably use a machine like diabetics do. I've not done it for a long time, but that's the bit I always used to hate. That used to hurt really, 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 and it's kind of, I do not want. You couldn't, but can I not give blood without that? But no, you can't, because they need that to check that it's safe for you to give blood. But That was a bit I used to really hate when they jabbed my thumb. The rest, I don't mind. Well, if you don't, Wolfie, you know. It's not, if you can, I think it's a good thing. But if you can't, then fine, you know. That's one of the things about a free world. You can make that choice. Anyway, I am going to do some tidying up because I've got that to pick up, stuff to pick up off the floor, which is I'm stood on a tapholding at the moment, so I've got that to all the chippings that went on the floor to pick up. So it'll be about another 10 or 15 minutes before I finish. So hopefully those of you who are watching enjoyed seeing some carving. We don't get to the detail carving for a long time. I'm probably going to chop this piece of wood in half actually. Somewhere down there, and at least then I've got two pieces, because there's no point in trying to use all of this. It is too thick for this. This is I got this piece of wood to do some three-dimensional carving in. Don't know what I was going to do in it, but I got it for that purpose. And I'm doing a relief carve here, so and the relief will, that's the centre. The back plane will be about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch, so I've got to come down to that level, and there's no point having a thick back plane or carving all the way down here and wasting most of the wood. So I'm probably going to try and cut it in half, get the circular saw out tomorrow, run it down all 4 sides, and then go down with a big saw. I don't have a bandsaw. That would be dead easy with a bandsaw, just run it through and job done. But yes, most of the carving of waste wood, we get to the details, is kind of the final bit. But hopefully it's an interesting enough subject for those people that are watching. A Gibberer, Hearthstone, sort of a Hearthstone card. We're doing the top half of it really. Mainly because I don't have a piece of wood big enough to do the whole card, and it seemed a waste to do it just in the centre there, tiny. So we get a nice big image. Yeah, it would be really expensive. Parcel post from the UK, about £6 to post that. Minimum, at least. And then probably about the same to post it back. It's you can get cheap bandsaws for about £80. So it's almost as cheap to buy one than it is to ship it to you, Wolfie. But thank you for all the offer. Right, for anybody that's watching, some information. I should be streaming again tomorrow. I should be streaming again tomorrow night. Hopefully my master server, my master controller doesn't die again, and I can get I can fix the IP address, but hopefully I'll be streaming in tomorrow night. I intend to start as soon after 7 PM, as eating the evening meal allows me to do so at 7 PM UK time, which is on GMT at the moment. We're going towards BST, but we're not there yet. It's still quite dark out there in the evenings. And we'll go on for about 2 hours or so. And then a couple of other things to mention. If you'd like to support the channel, there's 3 buttons at the top right which will let you do so. There's the follow button which lets you signal that you'd like to come back and see some more. That helps the channel. Lots of followers helps the channel. And of course it lets you know when I'm streaming. So does Twitter, by the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter. I'm @ZaragonArt. And the other 2 are more direct support. There's either the bits, of course, or even the subscriptions, which go towards doing things like buying wood. Decent wood, as Wolfie's just mentioned, apart from the fact the shipping costs are quite a bit, is not particularly cheap. It doesn't, as I like to say, good wood doesn't grow on trees. It is trees, but it doesn't grow on them. So it costs quite a bit to chop trees down. I ought to know. We chopped a few down out there, and no, you can't carve them because it takes a long time to dry wood out. I do have some nice big tree slices which are drying out, and maybe in a year or so's time I'll be able to either apply pyrography to them after they've been planed and sanded, or I could even relief carving to the top of them maybe, but it takes about 2 or 3 years to dry them out sufficiently, and big logs for carving or even cutting blocks. It's not really a home job, it's a professional job, and they use ovens and kilns and things like that to do it with. But anyway, I think, well, I don't know about Netherlands. In the UK you don't get bits for watching ads. I think that's in the certainly I know that's possible in the States, but you have to, what they do is they've got so many bits to give out per day, so they start, let's say, at 12 noon, and you get so many bits per advert. So once those bits have been given out, that's it for the rest of the day. And if you can imagine, sort of at 12 o'clock, 20,000 people suddenly start watching adverts, the bits run out really quickly. Don't know about Europe at all. You'd have to read Twitch for that. Well, thank you, Wolfie. I mean, it all goes to help. I have to collect a fair few of them though before they actually get given to me. There's a threshold I have to get past before I get any at all. So they're sort of collected in the bank, if you like, at the moment, and I've got to get so many before they actually will let me withdraw any. So what are you? Okay. So whilst I can't read Dutch, I'm gathering that says you get 5 bits for watching an advert. So oh. Well, there you go then. I don't think we can do it in the UK. I might have to have a look, but I usually watch the adverts. Well, I don't you? I was about to say I usually watch the adverts. You've usually got no choice. You can't usually skip them, so you'll do your best. What you're going to do is persuade everybody else to do the same thing, Wolfie, and that's worth as much as get lots of people to watch the channel. That's worth a lot. Anyway, yeah, fair enough. I'm streaming because I want to stream. If I get anything to help me stream, then that's fine, because I will eventually run out of wood and things, and it's a hobby, so it might come a time when you're seeing a lot of pyrography on paper. Of course, paper's expensive, but you get more for it than you get a block of wood for the same price, for example. And so I can do a lot more pyrography, which is why you saw quite a bit of it so far. Yeah, no, that's a reasonable thing, Wolfie. Is that? So, you're right, you don't know what people are going to use the money for. And if you give them an item, you know exactly what they're going to use the item for. Yeah, it's a reasonable thing to do. Anyway, I've talked enough. I've got to clear up. So I say thank you, Wolfie, you and anybody else who's watching, for watching. And I hope I'll see you on the next stream, so bye for now.